What the Hummer am I going to talk about today? You're going to find out. Hummer was originally called a Humvee, which is a highly mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicle. That's what Humvee originally stood for. And I had to do a little homework on this because I know a lot about a lot, but I don't know everything about a lot, if that makes any sense. So it was originally conditioned by the military, essentially to replace the Jeep. The Jeep was the military's tried and true transport vehicle, and they wanted something more adequate. Now, for those of us that are Gen Xers, like Wawa, we'll remember when we first saw the Humvee during the Gulf War in 1991, that's when the world really got to see what that vehicle could do, because that was all publicized on all the national news stations. So how the Hummer, as they called it H1, came to be what it is. So if you remember, Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was making the Terminator and those movies from the 80s and 90s, he really pushed AM General, who owned it, to make a civilian version because he knew people would like it. So we all remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger was driving around in the Hummer, and because he's just a big, buff, burly guy, and his personality just, fit that, okay? That got the attention of General Motors. General Motors acquired Hummer brand line from AM General. That's when we had the H1, the H2, and the H3. That's when gas was cheap. Gas guzzling SUVs were extremely popular at that time. Now, what kind of led to Hummer's demise is that during the 2000s, that's when there was a big environmental push. We need to worry about fuel economy, etc., and blah, blah, blah. And then there was ultimately the financial crisis from 07, 08. GM filed bankruptcy, and part of the deal with the government is because at the time, GM had 8 brands that they reduced down to 4, and one of them was Hummer. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, especially with what's going on with Trump's beef with China, but GM at one point in time was legitimately attempting to sell the Hummer brand to China. Okay, I thank God that didn't happen. So, GM, these manufacturers have special trademark rights on vehicles because they brought back the Hummer, not as a brand, but an EV line as part of their GMC division. It's an electric SUV and it's an electric truck. They look really cool. I haven't driven one. I would love to drive one because I would love to see what this thing could do, because I remember the old Hummers. I've been in those and driven one. You want to talk about the most inconvenient vehicle to drive? Drive an old school Hummer, because the perception when you're driving, because I've driven one, I've driven a couple actually, and when you're driving down the road, there's no perception of it. You want the most aggravating vehicle I've ever driven as a Hummer. I've just remembered I've driven one. I've driven a couple down, I call it Manslaughter Road. It's called Manchester Road here near where I live, but I call it Manslaughter Road because never mind. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole about never mind. But anyway, that is the most inconvenient vehicle to drive. I just remembered that. But that's kind of so now GM has brought them back as part of their EV lineup. They look really cool, 4-wheel steering apparently, and that's a trip down Hummer memory lane. Have a good day.